So we finally had some news from Nexon about the first Descendant. If you're not familiar with the first Descendant, it is a looter shooter coming from Nexon. It's, if you imagine the Division 2 meets Warframe, the Descendants themselves work a little bit like Warframes, where you grind up components to unlock a new Descendant. And then the way the loot works is very similar to the Division 2, so it's a bit of a cross between them, which obviously puts it right up my alley. I love looter shooters. I'm currently playing the Division 2, Warframe, Suicide Squad, and I cannot wait for the first Descendant. So I thought it would be worth taking a look at the dev notes. This is dev note 7. I think it's the first one they've done of the year, to be honest, but I thought it would be worth having a read through and seeing what's going on, seeing what the updates are. This dev team have actually been very reactive to what the community have been saying. I've played both of the betas so far. The first one had the grapple hook in and it was very static, or not static, that's the wrong word. It was very linear. Linear is the right word, where you'd point and it would take you to that exact point. A lot of people said the grappling hook's a great idea, but this is boring. Give us something more interesting, make it more dynamic. So they completely overhauled it from one beta to the other and made it more like a swing mechanic. So you could either grapple to a specific place or you could use it to swing, and that's fantastic. And they did the same with the gunplay. The gunplay in the first one felt very light, and they completely overhauled that. Now it feels heavy, bassy. So it is interesting to read through these devlogs and see what they've actually changed. Because like I say, they're actually really reactive to the community, which is rare. Let's dig in, starting with how the dev team has been doing. The crossplay open beta test was amazing, but it left us with a lot of homework. So we chatted between ourselves saying, why is there such an unrelieving feeling when the test went well? We believe it's because the fact that so many people are excited for the first Descendant, it's made us feel more accountable, which is good. I mean, I suppose you are if you're making a game. As soon as the crossplay open beta test finished, we began planning the game's launch based on the extensive feedback we received during the tests period. We worked hard to develop a plan for what we wanted to rectify and enhance before launching. We spent the rest of the last year fleshing out the plan and beginning development. And before we could feel the end of year holiday season, we were already in 2024. It did come up fast. It came up pretty fast. From the open beta test to the Game Awards. So this is just about the Game Awards. They had a trailer at the Game Awards revealing it would be released in summer 2024, which is great news. So we don't need to read about the trailer. So when in summer 2024? Yes, the summer launch this year has officially been confirmed in the Game Awards trailer. However, we are currently finalizing the actual release date and our future plans, so bear with us a little while longer. That is absolutely fine. Take all the time you need. How are the 110,000 comments received from the cross-play open beta test being incorporated? Wow. We received a ton of feedback, but we were able to clearly identify what needed to be done after reviewing everything. Among them were the story, as well as the problems with the empty fields, a challenging environment for co-op, competitive content, etc. Oh, and a lot of people requested to make the grappling hook better. Yes, so the grappling hook in this game is what I genuinely believe could be its unique selling point compared to the other looter shooters. It's entering a genre with a lot of shared DNA. A lot of games in the looter shooter genre, you can look at something and go, yes, they all have this. So they need something to stand out and make them unique. I think that first Descendant, if they play it right, could use the grappling hook as a very unique piece of gear, but it does need tweaks. When we first used it in the first beta, or the alpha, first beta, it was, like I say, it was linear. You'd point it and you'd go to that thing. There wasn't even a real climbing mechanic. You kind of just bounced up the ledge. They looked at the feedback, they made changes. It became more of like a swinging mechanic, which is great, that's what you wanted, but it still needs tweaks. I think it needs a bit of a longer rope to it. I think it needs a slightly shorter cooldown. You need to be able to interact with enemies more. You need to be able to really swing. I mean, I'm talking like Spider-Man style swing, and that could really make the game stand out as a very unique selling point. The dev team was able to better prioritize the work that needed to be completed before the launch, thanks to these feedbacks, which also helped us identify the challenging but crucial issues. About 200 employees are currently working in various roles in preparation for the launch. The teams are working on several small to big issues simultaneously. We are extremely focused on ensuring that it all comes together in one piece. We've been working on dubbing the recent revised lore, which is going through significant changes as a result of the feedback we received during the cross-play open beta test. A small spoiler alert, Descendants will work with the main character to complete objectives and make significant appearances as NPCs in the main story. Okay, that's quite cool. So they're making the Descendants more characters than equipables. The last beta, the opening scene had, I think it was Bunny and Ajax kind of working together as a team, and they did give them more personality. And I quite like that. I like the idea of them being more characters that you could play. We're developing original storylines for Descendants to give them more character and narrative depth. Nice, I like that. Along with story improvements, we're also preparing richer in-game cinematics. Since the first Descendant received a lot of attention for its amazing cinematics, please also look forward to immersive in-game story cinematics that we hope to deliver. Brilliant. What about empty fields? Yeah, so this was a bit of a problem. If I've still got some gameplay, I'll put it up on screen now, but the game did have large empty areas. Don't get me wrong, it was a stunning environment. It's a very, very pretty game. But the open areas didn't have a lot to do. Until you actually triggered the mission itself, then the enemies would spawn in. This is also a hot topic. To be honest, it combines both the technical constraints and genre traits. Combining the open world, shooter, and online game genres was one of the hardest things the dev team had to do to create the first Descendant. With the ability to shoot from a distance of 100 meters and up to 150 meters, shooters are a genre distinguished by an extremely broad engagement range. It was a great challenge to accommodate a large number of players while maintaining synchronization between the monster AI and gamers inside this range. Furthermore, it was challenging to define the player's path to entry due to the open fields. Furthermore, the genre prioritizes the sensation of shooting over all other considerations. The characters need to react quickly to hits and fire right away when the player pulls the trigger. In our defense of fields looking empty, we have so far avoided having a lot of moving AI in the open field for the sake of online play and shooting. But we are solving this problem because the fields in the previous Crossplay open beta test received a lot of feedback. Yeah, it did feel barren. Like I say, it was a really good looking world. It does look great. Again, if I have gameplay, I'll throw it up. But yeah, it was empty. It was really empty. Thus, we significantly made changes to the fields. In order to minimize the area where battles occurred, we have divided the fields into smaller sections and incorporated a variety of non-mission content in between. These include out-of-combat content and enemies that defend their bases regardless of missions. While increasing the density of content in the fields with such changes, we're also working on increasing the density of players in a given space to facilitate co-op play. Okay, so the open world areas were quite big. They were big and barren, and they're looking at cutting them down into smaller sections, but making them denser with more players and more NPCs. I think that would come down to how small they make the spaces. That could be fine. That could work great, to be honest. But it depends how small they make the spaces and how that affects the loading time between the spaces, if there is any. We're making adjustments so it'll be more likely to run into other players who are on the same mission. And dungeons now have matchmaking for smooth co-op play. It will also be possible to bring other players into your current mission through the request for help feature. So there is going to be more multiplayer support than before. Okay, that sounds good. About the modules. So modules are the mods of the first Descendant. If you've played Warframe, mods basically increase the power of your Warframe through upping different attributes. Modules are pretty much the exact same thing in the first Descendant. These increase your general attributes, weapon damage, health, armor, shield, all that kind of stuff, ability strength. Well, first off, we believe the outcome was as good as we could have hoped for, because the video of content creators who participated in the Crossplay open beta test showed they put a lot of thought into optimizing their builds using modules. The idea behind modules is to let you customize your build to get the most out of your specs and realize your power fantasy with this character. In terms of how far we've come in that regard, we aren't quite there yet in the Crossplay open beta test. I thought the modules were quite good. They had some modules unique to characters, which actually transformed the abilities. So each character or Descendant had 4 abilities, and you had mods you could put in, and they would completely alter how they behaved. I think a good example would be Ajax had a shield that he put in front of him. You could add a mod that would make it so you couldn't shoot while the shield was up, but the bullets bounced back at the enemies. In large, the modules included ultimate modules and skill modification modules, which have the ability to change the nature of a build. But checking the data revealed that the module's utilization was somewhat skewed. It's possible that the short test period left little time to experiment and integrate the capabilities of various modules. But given that the development team's goal is to enable a range of different build settings, the outcome was disheartening. In order to guarantee every Descendant with a unique module setting at launch, and the same Descendants may have multiple module settings depending on their playstyle or main skill, we're making a number of changes. Okay, I didn't see a problem with the modules personally. We think looter shooters are basically games where you assemble your own build and realize your power fantasy, and the only difference is that we use our guns for shooting. How you assemble the modules to create your build is important for that process, and we received a lot of data from the 2 tests we've run, which are giving us answers on how we can improve the areas that are lacking. So we're much confident that the game will be much better next time. It's good to hear. How a character is created. Okay, when we create a character, we normally start by thinking about the position the character will take. At the same time, we think about what the edge of this character is while planning the character's background, appearance concept, and their skill set, and work on creating that edge as we draw and model the character. Communication is crucial during the process because it involves several teams. During the early concept phase for Bunny, we wanted to create a character that could run around and wipe out enemies without firing a shot, so naturally the art team came up with a rabbit concept. It was a case where the character's edge was summarized very well in a single line. After the characterization is complete, it is followed by a process of iterative testing where we check that the character's skills work as intended and make any necessary adjustments. It's especially important to make sure that the character is easy to control with a gamepad. As you can see, it takes time and cooperation between various teams to create a single character. So there are cases where we discover potential in a character during development that we didn't realize in the initial planning stage and have to revise our plans. Because of this, it's really thrilling when we finalize a new character and use them in the field for the first time. We also put a lot of work on the character's appearance because the first Descendant is a character collection game. We took note of what players found appealing about the characters, particularly in the Crossplay open beta test, and improved their shortcomings and amplified their strengths to make them more appealing. We worked very hard to display the backside of the characters in greater detail during the cross-play open beta test because the game is a third-person shooter. About the endgame content, okay. So of what I played of the endgame, it was basically against these titan-like creatures. You were spawned into a large zone and there was one massive titan creature and I think there were 4 players. And you basically all had to work together to break pieces of armor off this creature and take it down. And some of these were hard. Some were really easy, some weren't a problem at all, but some of them were really, really hard, very fun. About the endgame content. We believe the Intercept Void Battle was a component of the endgame material you encountered. The Intercept Void Battles itself are compelling endgame content in our opinion, especially when the hard setting steadily increases the amount of cooperation, strategizing, and mechanic breaking required. For the launch, we've created more endgame content in additional Intercept Void battles. The fields will now have hard difficulty, better loot will be available at higher tier difficulty when the main story in all 8 fields has been completed. All dungeons will have a system that supports matchmaking. Dungeons on hard difficulty will also have a system where you can choose penalty options to challenge yourself to an even harder environment. The dev team intends to offer a variety of endgame content that suits the player's preferences and farming locations. There are Intercept Void battles on hard difficulty that require party play, and there will be dungeons that can also be enjoyed solo too. That's nice to hear, so they're catering for groups and solo players. We are also working on various quality of life improvements to make life easier to replay various content. Implementing matchmaking in dungeons is one of them. On the other hand, we're also improving the private mode for players who don't want to be matched with strangers in Intercept Void battles and dungeons. I wonder if they're going to make Void battles soloable too, because the ones I played you probably couldn't do solo. Since we are a live servicing game with constant updates, we think the endgame content will also need to be constantly updated. Regardless of how enjoyable the Intercept Void battles are, players may grow accustomed to them in as little as 3 months. And after 6 to 12 months may lose their novelty. This is true. Never underestimate the speed your players will play your content. They will burn through it. They really will. Suicide Squad, which released recently, people are already well into the end game. I mean, much further than the devs expected. It's unbelievable, really. Never underestimate players, never. Because of this, we are also making plans for how we'll improve new endgame material through updates when it's required. Since it's a live game, I think the end content should also continue to change. About consoles, we're putting a lot of effort into improving the first Descendant console gameplay. In the cross-play open beta test, we were new to consoles, so features like gamepad controls and optimization weren't up to par. We intend to fix these issues. As we announced, we have a 50-50 ratio of console and PC users, which is a quite high ratio of console users for an online game. Thus, we're thinking a lot of providing additional care for both PC and console users, which is great, it's fantastic. I believe there will be improvements in a number of areas, including the stabilization of performance and optimization. We also intend to offer other features. Wrapping up, we wanted to share some of our recent work in this dev note, as well as a more candid behind the scenes look at the first Descendant development. In the future, we'll be releasing more dev notes covering a variety of topics. Please continue to support and provide feedback to the First Descendant, and we'll continue to respond to questions that we can address promptly through our community Q&A. Thank you. So that was pretty cool. There's a lot coming. It's nice to hear that they're thinking of the end game. The end game is very important for a live service game. The thinking of console players, that's great, especially with a crossplay game. You can't just be focusing on PC or on console. And I am happy to hear they're still playing with the grappling hook. I think a lot of good stuff could come from the grappling hook. I'm curious to see how the open fields will play with them cutting them down and making them smaller. It might be better, as long as they're actually doing something with that. If they cut it down, make the area smaller and only have a little bit going on, it'll just feel like they've shortened the game world. But if they really pack it dense and put a lot of enemies in there, a lot of player interaction, I think it'll be worth it. I'm really looking forward to hear more from the First Descendant. It is coming out in summer this year, so fingers crossed we get a date soon. There might be another beta, who knows. I will keep up to date with this game. If you'd like to see more First Descendant content on the channel, let me know by giving this video a like. Are you excited for the game, or is this not really for you? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads or streams. Have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one.